Hi folks, it's Warney here, and today we're looking at the Razer Blade 17 2022. My model comes with the Core i9-12900H CPU, the RTX 3080 Ti, the 144Hz 4K IPS display, and 32GB of DDR5 RAM. Now Razer doesn't care much for the unboxing experience, it's all very basic here. But I'm going to take a wild guess that the second you see your new laptop, you are not going to mind. And that's because these things are just so well built. Nobody really prioritises build quality like Razer does in the Windows laptop field. They're still significantly ahead of all of their competitors in terms of the feel of the device. There's zero flex in the keyboard deck and zero flex in the lid. I would think along the lines of a MacBook Pro, because I think that's where Razer drew their inspiration for the style and the execution of this build. But they haven't been complacent. The small updates they've made this year add up to make a big difference. For example, the keyboard has been improved just by increasing the size of the keycaps. Suddenly it just feels like a much more natural typing experience, and I think there's a little bit more feedback on actuation as well. They feel that tiny bit snappier. And the speakers, not only do they look better with the laser cut holes, the old speaker grills used to attract all sorts of dust and skin and yuckiness, but they sound incredible. I don't know who they've employed to do this, but they have nailed the sound setup. The sound stage is right where you want it to be, and the music, gaming, media, anything sounds lovely, natural and clear. It might be a tiny bit lacking in bass, but I am sure that most of you are going to be very, very happy with the speaker setup. Now, we need to talk about this display, folks. So my model has the 4K 144Hz IPS panel, and it is just excellent. It covers all of the metrics that I look for in a gaming panel. So it's got really good colour gamut at 100% DCI-P3. It's a bright screen at 500 nits peak brightness. And I think most important to me is that it's a really, really responsive display for gaming on. I've had no problems whatsoever playing fast-paced titles on this display, and it surprised me a little bit because most 4K displays out there are pretty average in terms of response time, but this one feels really, really snappy. There's no signs of blurring. I think the only thing that I would long for is G-Sync. I think that would just be the icing on the cake for a display that's this accomplished. So the build quality is excellent, the input devices are very, very good, and the screen and the speakers are some of the best I've ever seen on a Windows device. So now it's time to talk about thermals and performance. So Razer has made some key decisions in the way that this device is balanced, and for the most part, especially if you're a gamer, I think their decisions really pay off. Razer have prioritised getting as much power into the GPU as possible, and when you're running a 4K panel, that's exactly what you want to do. So often your CPU will be down in the 30-40 watt range, while your GPU is hogging all the power up at 160-165 watts, and the frame rate performance as a result of this is really surprising for such a thin and light device. And the spooky thing about it is that it never really makes a lot of noise or gets particularly hot in doing so. The fans are quieter than most, and the speakers are better. You can definitely game without a headset on. This is Cyberpunk 2077 running at 1440p with DLSS set to quality with the full set of ray tracing features switched on. On this display, scaling down to 1440p isn't a problem. The pixel density is so high that it's actually difficult to tell the difference between the two. But if you want to game at 4K, you can run the same settings with DLSS set to performance, and you'll still be at 60 FPS. And the only trade-off is that they've limited CPU power in order to keep thermals well under control. So in Cinebench R23, you can expect a multi-core score of 15,000. The single-core score is exceptional though at 1900. In 3D Mark Time Spy, you can expect graphics scores up to 13,700, which is honestly beyond what I expected from this hardware. But the CPU score will be less impressive at around 11,000. So how do we sum up the Blade 17, and should you consider buying one? The improvements they've made this year add up to make a big difference. The increased wattage to the GPU, the keyboard, the speakers, and even the inclusion of a tiny power brick using GaN technology. The 280-watt brick is smaller than most companies' 240-watt bricks. It all adds up to be a much more portable package than you would expect. CPU performance is underwhelming, and the all-metal case conducts heat. It can get a little hot on CPU-intensive games. I'd love to see Razer include a Ryzen chip in this chassis and just let it rip, because I think the performance would be incredible. And battery life would be improved too. And then there's the price, and I guess only you will know whether this will all add up to something that's worth it. I bought my model manufacturer refurbished, and it was £1,200 cheaper than the list price. Otherwise, I probably would have gone for the 3070 Ti with the QHD display, because then you get G-Sync, and I think the 3070 Ti is more than adequate for gaming on a 1440p display. So let me know what you think of the Blade 17. I think this device has been overlooked somewhat this year, and I think it's mainly because of the pricing. But I do think it's quite unique. Gaming without headphones isn't something you can do on many gaming laptops, but I really enjoy it on this one. If you found this video helpful, a like would be greatly appreciated, and if you're interested in more videos like this one, please consider subscribing. That's it from me, and I hope to see you in the next one.